Am I the butthole for refusing to allow the hospital to discharge my wife to me? My wife now has stage 4 colon cancer. For the past year and a half, I have had to work and then come home and do the majority of the household chores, and I was also treated as the nurse. We have 2 sons, 18 male, 16 male, and a daughter, 15 female, that help out, but it became expected of me to be their go-to parent on everything. A year ago, my wife pretty much stopped being able to do anything for herself. She's exceptionally rude to me, and pretty much screams and cries hysterically all the time, and sometimes mutters on about people who haven't been in our lives for some time. She also blames me for not being kind to her when I am putting my entire life on hold when I'm at home, and I felt like I didn't even have an identity anymore. Over the summer I have talked to doctors and they told me there was a lot of red tape regarding getting my wife into a nursing home. I talked with my dad, 74M, and he told me that from his understanding, hospitals, if you didn't pick up a patient after discharge 3 days later, the hospital's social worker would have to place them into a specialized nursing facility. Last week, my wife had to be rushed to the emergency room. For the week I didn't have to be her nurse, I realized how much of a strain taking care of a barely lucid, and angry when she was lucid woman had become to me. I realized that I was basically being mom and dad around the house, and I was so tired of doing this every single day and then waking up at 6 to go to work. When I found out my wife was set to be discharged, I ended up making up my mind. When the hospital called to say that they were going to discharge my wife and I needed to be there to receive her, I told them that I did not want to take care of her anymore. The hospital continuously called me back and the person on the other line would beseech me to bring my wife home. However, I stood my ground and said that my wife needed to go to a professional nursing facility, and said that the hospital's social workers needed to figure that out. Am I the butthole for finally realizing I had reached my limits? My daughter in particular is very upset that her mom is not coming home. My son screamed at me that they would take care of their mother 24/7 if they had to. However, I knew that the hospital's social worker would do his/her job competently and help my wife into a facility. Uda, I feel for you. Taking care of someone who is very sick as well as 3 kids and a full-time job, I can sympathize that this is very draining and difficult. However, the way you are going about this is not right and not fair to your wife or your kids. First off, you need to admit that you need help and ask for it. This just seems like you spent the last year taking on more and more until you burned yourself out. Caregivers burnout is a real thing, and as you've experienced, can hit hard. How about asking one of your parents to come help? A sibling? Or perhaps hire a nurse to come and help you out during the day? Find some way to allow yourself to relax. Making a decision to force your wife into a nursing home isn't fair to her, and it isn't fair to your kids. This needed to be a conversation that you had with your wife and your kids. Not something that you all of a sudden decided to force happen. I understand you are burnt out, but throwing your hands up and giving up isn't the right call here. Even if you agree on finding a nursing home, perhaps choose one with your wife instead of forcing her into whatever the system will provide. Spoiler alert, it's probably not going to be very good. Your kids are probably going to hate you for this, so if you are okay with your entire immediate family being very upset with you for a long time, well, kudos I guess. Edit. Thank you all for all the awards. Made a small typo correction. My heart breaks for his wife. Dying, unable to care for herself, torn away from her children. Abandoned by the one person who swore to be there. Guess he didn't actually read in sickness and in health, caregiver burnout is real. I understand it logically. But emotionally, imagining being her. Laying there, knowing your husband is refusing to get you. I'm literally crying here. I'm going to cling to my husband and hope to God he never turns into that. In mild sickness and preferably always health, for richer and maybe just slightly less rich, until inconvenience do we part? My husband and I said, till boredom do us part. The great news is that we both have major chronic issues, so it's never boring. Smiley face. Edit. Major mental health issues. We battle our conditions, not each other. See comment below for context. Thanks for the award, haha. I think how he went about it is really bad, but can you stop pretending he didn't spend a year trying to take care of her and the household at the same time? Y'all like to dramatize everything, and it needs to be either black or white or it doesn't work. Yes, he should have thought about a better way to relieve his pressure, but he didn't only care for her in mild sickness. Said by a person who has never had to be a caregiver for someone else. particularly someone who is supposed to be a life partner. Life is effing hard, and this guy is clearly suffering from burnout, but he just gave up. That's not how it works. Ask for help when you need it, don't just abandon your family when crap gets hard. This is exactly what I was thinking. She also has to be in horrible pain. You can't blame a sick, dying person for being angry. Not to mention original post says she is barely lucid. In this case she probably can't even control her anger. Exactly like you said, caregiver burnout is real, but how could you do that to your dying wife? Original post is also stripping his kids of the last time they have with their mother. They're almost adults. Original post is going to be completely alone in a few years if he's not careful. I hope you get some help and realize that this is fleeting. It's hard now, but, as you said, your wife is stage 4. Don't let your kids miss out on any precious time they have left with their mother. You can't also treat someone like absolute garbage and expect them to still want to do everything for you. Yeah, it's his wife, but how much of her is actually his wife? I've watched several family members die to cancer, and not a single one of them acted like that aside from my 3-year-old nephew who beat cancer. And that's because he was a toddler on steroids and chemo. He got a free pass for having tantrums. Cancer sucks, but you know what else sucks? The way she's been treating her husband. Vows work both ways, everyone. My husband died of cancer last year. Aside from the fear and anger that cancer can cause, the chemo and the disease itself ravages the brain, as well as the body. I know of several people whose spouses became physically or emotionally abusive as their diseases progressed. Think of it like a brain injury, it changes the personality. This is not something Op's wife can control. I absolutely feel for Op. He is completely worn out, and without proper help in place. Came here to say this. The way my husband acted towards the end of his life was not who my husband was. And I can only imagine how terrified he would have been had I just gave up and left him when he was at his most vulnerable and afraid. I dated a guy when I was young who was in remission, but the cancer came back. I was there for him, and in the end he became emotionally abusive. I was 19, I couldn't do it any longer and broke up with him. I sympathize with original post, but he went about it wrong. My mom was an only child and my grandmother got sick when my mom was still in her 20s. So she had her dying mother, her father, that in hindsight was in the early stages of Alzheimer's, a husband, doing crazy hours, and 2 kids to take care of. I watched as she started to completely unravel even though my dad did his best to help. She completely broke down. I know original post went about this the wrong way, but he's utterly burnt out and can't see the wood for the trees. Not just a very tired career. Yeah, but cancer does this. Not to everyone, but too many. Their personality changes completely and they become angry and abusive. They can't help it. Cancer affects the brain. Original post said she's barely lucid and has been muttering about people who haven't been in their lives for years. She is not in her right mind. It's a horrible situation for all involved, but original post is choosing to leave his wife alone and his kids devastated, because it's too hard. His wife doesn't have that choice and nor do his kids. Part of it is the meds. I know they had a friend on so many steroids because of the issues he was having with infections. That, coupled with being 25 and dying of cancer, truly destroyed a friend before he died. Unfortunately, dying is messy. The drugs, the physical and mental damage, people break. How exactly is dying of cancer a way one treats another person? Cancer can cause permanent and very negative changes in people's behavior. In my family, the trend seems to be to get less stable and more abusive of the people you depend on. It seems like this is happening with Op's wife, and is getting to be too much for him to handle alone. You're so right. My grandmother died of cancer and my grandfather didn't want my mom to fly out to see her. He said she didn't recognize him and was being verbally abusive. He said he wanted my mom to remember her mother as she was when she was well. It all happened very quickly, so there wasn't much time before she passed away. Then, my father had dementia. As I live overseas, my family tried to keep it from me for ages, as they didn't want to upset me. I have depression, well controlled through medication. When I did find out, he had gotten quite bad, and my mom said I didn't have to visit him. She said, remember him the way he was, dear. And I'm thankful for that. This wouldn't work for all families, but it worked for us. I think they're referring to the wife being exceptionally rude to Op. I'd be exceptionally rude if I was dying of cancer and my husband was complaining about putting his life on hold to care for me and our children, to be honest. I thought we were supposed to be his life? Wouldn't it also suck for the person taking care of you if you were emotionally abusing them every time you were lucid? I've seen this happen in my own family. It is not pretty and it is not easy. It is hard for the person dying, and it's hard for the person taking care of them because many times, by the time cancer takes you, you are not the person they were taking care of. And sometimes the new person is mean, and bitter, and angry at everything and there is nothing you can do about it. Can't you imagine that to be exhausting? To take care of 3 kids and your sick wife full time, with her mental and physical health rapidly deteriorating to the point you don't even recognize her, and then on top of that she hates you. I agree this guy is TA, but the way he writes doesn't sound like caregiver burnout. His main complaint is that he has to be mom and dad around the house, the youngest child is 15, that his wife is not very friendly, and that he is putting his life on hold when he is at home. To me he sounds a lot like somebody who used to do nothing at all at home and is now upset that his wife is no longer doing all the work around the house. My guess is that the wife has every reason to be upset and angry as he is probably making a huge deal about each little thing he has to do now that she used to do before. The absolute heartless way in which he talks about his dying wife solely as inconvenience to his comfort really speaks volumes. I used to care for my increasingly helpless mother in the months before she died, and the least of my worries was putting my life on hold when I was home. My main worry was that I was barely able to leave the house and was starting to neglect my 4-year-old. But never would I have dreamed of simply not getting her home from the hospital. Instead I hired a caregiver for her and looked into short-term nursing homes to give myself a break. This guy must be the biggest, most callously selfish butthole I've ever seen on this sub. Right, when I read this what went through my mind was so you hate being the woman in the house. It's how dare my wife get sick and leave me to look after the home and kids and now I have to put everything on hold and she also expects me to take car off her as well. When I don't want a husband sounds like a effing butthole. Those poor kids. And luckily the wife isn't with it enough to know what a prick her husband is. And his kids at that age should be helping out too. All could cook dinner and clean, they just need to work as a team. Teamwork is failing in that household. This was exactly how I read it. I kept thinking damn lol. A lot of women put their lives on hold when they take care of kids. His wife probably did as well. Now that it's his turn, he's tired of it. Maybe I'm biased but my father did the same thing to me as a disabled teenager, abandoned me at a hospital and refused to pick me up, forcing the system to take up the slack, which they didn't and I was left penniless and dumped in an elderly care home that didn't have the appropriate resources. Turns out homeless shelters don't make allowances for the disabled and it's a system already under terrible strain and struggling to manage the numbers they already have. Having been in the wife's position, shame on Op. Caregiver burnout is real, but this is neglect. Uda. Your comment actually helped made my vote because this is how it looks on the other side. They make these short-sighted decisions because they just ultimately can't handle it right now, and make the worst decision possible that will now permanently affect the relationship, and surrounding relationships. I'm sorry this happened to you. I can't give you a real hug, but I'm so sorry this happened to you. It never should have. Piggybacking the top comment for exposure. Uda. Medical social worker here. This may get taken down for violating that which will not be named. People in nursing homes are 1000% more likely to catch that which shall not be named, and 40% of the shall not be named deaths in the US got said illness in a nursing home. Additionally, by not having the conversation and shutting down means you are lacking information on other options. And that you don't know how the nursing home will be covered/paid for. In the US you need a skilled need for insurance coverage, a long-term care insurance plan, Medicaid or to private pay. You also haven't done any research into the facilities available. If in the US, you can start your search at, for the record, not picking up someone from a hospital may be seen as a sign of abuse. It is possible that they would have called Adults Protective Services. Web link. I don't know what magical place he lives in that the government swoops in and takes care of things if you just avoid hospital discharge for 3 days, but I want to live in that place. As a SW in a nursing home, I'm glad it was already said. Ridiculous. There are resources available to you, you need to ask for help. Uda, my mother died of stage 4 lung cancer a little over a year ago, but we had 3 years with her. 3 years where I also had newborn twins, worked from home and still took care of her until my dad came home. Then he did everything in his power to be there. It's okay to admit that you need help, my dad did. My brother, myself and my husband all came together to help when he asked. You didn't ask for help though, just left yourself burdened to someone else in the laziest way possible. Burnout is real, but you don't just drop your wife like that. You're the person who she's looking to for help. And anger is normal when one is facing death. Painful death. Because cancerous death is effing painful. My mom was never an angry person, until she reached the end. I never once got upset because it was absolutely normal for her to feel all kinds of bitter and upset. I simply supported her how I had to, so that the last of her life wasn't in total misery and loneliness. You owe your wife that, too. Hijacking the top comment to make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into. You're clearly completely burned out, but a nursing home may not be the total get-out-of-jail-free card you're thinking it is. If you're in the US, you will be liable for the costs, and those facilities are typically in the range of $8K, $9K per month. You will have to drain your savings, including retirement plans, until you are on the verge of bankruptcy before Medicaid will pay a dime. Unless that's not a problem for some reason, you may have to find another option. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.